Welcome to Line Change. In today's video, we are going to take a look at the potential future for the Vancouver Canucks. We're going to take a little gander down the future road for the Vancouver Canucks. We're going to talk about what this team could look like 5 years from now. Now, obviously, that's a little ways away, but I thought it was an interesting topic to discuss and basically, ask who on the current Canucks roster could still be here 5 years from now. Now, obviously, there's a few that will, most likely. Elias Pettersson, he'll most likely still be here 5 years from now. Now, obviously, it all depends on whether or not we end up trading him prior to July 1st. I don't think we're going to trade him before the deadline. I think you can rule that out. As horrible as he's been playing, I just don't think he's going to get traded prior to the deadline on Friday. So if they're going to trade him, it's going to be before July 1st, so it'll be in the offseason. But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to say that Pettersson stays. He stays as a Canuck. And yeah, so that said, 5 years from now, Pettersson would be one who would still be here. Obviously, we don't know if Quinn Hughes will still be here 5 years from now. His contract is up in 2 years from now. And then next year, Demko's contract is up. So we don't know if Demko will still be here 5 years from now. But we do know Kevin Lankinen will still be here 5 years from now. And it will be the tail end of that 5-year contract that he signed just a couple weeks ago. Dakota Joshua could very well still be here. Joshua's contract, he signed a 4-year deal. So he's in the first year of a 4-year deal. So his contract would expire just before this 5-year mark. His contract would expire in 2028. So who knows, maybe he'd sign a short-term deal with the Canucks to stay. He would be 32 years old at the end of his contract. So we'll see about that. Another person who would very likely still be a Canuck, Jonathan Lekkerimaki. He is in the first year of his ELC, which entry-level contract. It's what any drafted player signs when they're initially drafted. They signed a entry-level contract, which is usually about under $1 million. It's usually Lekkerimaki's cap hit is $918,000. He will be a RFA in 2027, and then he won't be a UFA in unrestricted free agent until 2032. So that is after this whole 5-year period. So we're thinking, it's 2025 now. 5 years, 2030 is what we're looking at is for the timeline. Jonathan Lekkerimaki is 19 years old. So he would be essentially in his prime. Or no, he's 20, sorry. He signed his ELC when he was 19. So he'd be 25. And he essentially would be in the prime of his career. At this point, PD would be a little bit older. He would be in his early 30s. So he'd probably be either still in the prime of his career or, having already been in the prime of his career. Another name who could possibly still be here, Seelovs. Obviously, Tom Willander would be a part of this team by that point, and he would be basically probably what Lekkerimaki is now, maybe a little bit better. Or just getting his NHL career started, essentially. You also have the younger goalies in the Canucks system, Ty Young, Tolopilo. They'd be up with the team. A lot of the guys like Suter, Bluger would likely be gone. But there's a very good chance that Suter gets traded at the deadline. On that note, he very well may go to free agency in the offseason. And then Brock Boeser most likely will not be here 5 years from now. Boeser is likely to sign with another team in free agency. I'm, day by day, I'm starting to think Boeser will not be a Canuck next season, which is unfortunate because I've always been a big fan of Brock. So 5 years from now, Brock won't be here. There's a slight possibility Quinn may not be here. I really hope that's not the case. Obviously, Quinn is the heartbeat of this team. Another name who would still be here, Hronek, who signed a 7-year deal with the Canucks. 5 years from now, he would be in year 5 of that contract, so he would still be here. Trying to think of others who would still be here. I think that's all I can really name off the top of my head without like looking at contracts. But then I would have like 10 tabs. But anyway, that said, this team is gonna look very different 5 years from now. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is 5 years from now, we could potentially have a certain player. All these players that I just listed, the ones that have long-term contracts with the Canucks will be on this team, but we're not necessarily going to be talking about them. What we're talking about is a player who is currently not on the Vancouver Canucks. The person in particular that we're talking about is North Vancouver's own Connor Bedard. Now, as you saw from the thumbnail of this video, you probably already guessed we were going to do the Bedard talk. But yeah, that's basically the point of this video. Is we're not necessarily asking the what if question. We're basically putting on instead of our what if caps, we're putting on our future caps and our future lensed glasses. And we're going to look at this Vancouver Canucks, what this Vancouver Canucks team could possibly look like 5 years from now. And 5 years from now, Connor Bedard will be a UFA. So right now, he is in year 2 of his ELC. He will be a RFA in 2026 at the age of 20. Right now, Bedard is 19. And then he will be a UFA in 2030. So that's right around this timeline that we're talking about. 2030. He will be a UFA, and he will be free to sign with any team he wants. Obviously, we have to be somewhat realistic for this, as the Blackhawks probably do not want to lose Bedard and will do their utmost best to sign him long term. But I also feel as though Bedard has not been happy with the Blackhawks and the fact that they're rebuilding and they haven't built the team around him. They haven't given him guys who can play around him that make him better. They haven't done that in the 2 years that he's been in the NHL. And you've seen him during Blackhawk games. You've seen him on the bench just look dejected. So that's why I'm making this video. And also, Bedard's made it, I don't know if it was a tongue-in-cheek thing, but he basically said he'd love to be a Vancouver Canuck one day. I mean, who wouldn't want to play for their hometown? I know I would if I were in Bedard's shoes. And, if he was really serious about it, when he becomes a UFA, you don't think the Canucks would come a knocking? If he was available, they'd have to be stupid not to come knocking for Bedard. And, if they offered him something, he'd probably sign it in a heartbeat. Especially if he was a UFA and had nothing restricting him. Like, if technically the Canucks could still try and get him when he's a RFA. But the thing is, Chicago can match whatever the Canucks offer. At least if he's a UFA, the decision is completely up to Bedard. And knowing how much of a Canucks fan he was growing up and the fact that he's from Vancouver, I could see him signing with the Canucks as a UFA in 5 years, maybe 6. And again, that all depends on if the Blackhawks, after his ELC, if they sign him to an 8-year deal. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Him signing with the Canucks won't happen for a lot longer than 5 years. But if he signs a short-term deal or like a bridge deal, he could still hit free agency in 2030 and potentially sign with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, there's another name that I mentioned as like a subtitle in this video, Macklin Celebrini, who also is from Vancouver. But of course, the difference between Bedard and Celebrini is in year 1 of his ELC. He was drafted last year at the draft, first overall pick, much like Bedard was drafted first overall the year prior. And Celebrini is 18 years old. He's a center. He will be an RFA in 2027. He will be a UFA in 2031. So a year after Bedard, he will be a UFA. I believe Celebrini himself has, much like Bedard, been a little tongue-in-cheek and said he'd love to play for his hometown team. He'd love to be a Canuck one day. Between the two, I think it's more realistic that Bedard signs with us than Celebrini, or us getting both of them. That would be a Canuck fans' wet dream, is if they manage to land both Celebrini and Bedard as UFAs. So that's why in this video, we're leaning more towards the Bedard angle, just because I see that happening more so than Celebrini. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, and it could be the opposite, and Celebrini ends up signing eventually one day with the Canucks, and Bedard doesn't. He signs with, I don't know, Boston or Tampa Bay or Colorado. Who knows? Yeah. So a little bit more about Connor Bedard. This season, he's played 60 games. He's got 16 goals, 33 assists, and 49 points. So he's had a pretty darn good season so far. And yeah, he's definitely, I would say, a Canuck fan's wet dream to have. He's definitely the type of player that you could build a team around. Obviously, by the time he's a UFA, he'll be 5 years into his career. He will, like I mentioned with Mackie, he'll be in the prime of his career. But last season, his first season, he finished with 22 goals, 39 assists, 61 points in 68 games. So he had one heck of a rookie season, putting up 60 points or just over 60 points. This year, he's, as I mentioned, at 49, and we're only just into the second half of the season. Puckpedia doesn't show the projections, unfortunately. But right now he's at 49 points. He could very well eclipse his rookie season. Obviously, the goals are down a little bit compared to last season, and that is based on the fact that Chicago, other than Bedard, don't have a whole lot of offensive players who can play with him. Sure, you could argue that Donato's a good player, but Donato's a center, and so is Bedard. You could also argue Teravainen, but he hasn't exactly been all that great this season. They did recently get rid of Taylor Hall. They traded him to the Hurricanes, and you thought maybe Hall could work really well with Bedard, but that wasn't to be. And then let's take a quick gander at Celebrini in his season so far. So Celebrini's played 49 games. He's got 18 goals, 26 assists, and 44 points. So Celebrini himself has had a really good rookie season. That's only going to go up as the seasons go by. There's a reason he was drafted first overall. Same thing with Bedard. They could be the next Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, I guess. Maybe not necessarily Draisaitl, but both have been compared to McDavid when it comes to talent. Obviously, both are centers. But yeah, so that's going to do it for this video. What do you guys think? Do you guys think 5 years from now, the Canucks could sign Connor Bedard and he could be a Vancouver Canuck finally, and we could have that superstar player that this team has been wanting since the Canucks have been a part of the league? Yes, it's a bit of a pipe dream, but hey man, anything can happen, and you heard it from the horse's mouth himself, Bedard. Whether or not he was joking or not, but he's still, despite him having been drafted by the Blackhawks, he's still a huge Canucks fan. And he's from Vancouver. It's just his hometown. And what young player wouldn't ever want to, at least once in their career, play for their hometown team? I don't see how this could be a absolute no. Obviously, I mentioned there's the Blackhawks could do their best to try and make sure this doesn't happen. But at the end of the day, the decision, especially once Bedard becomes a UFA, the decision is 100% up to Connor Bedard. And what he wants to do is what will happen. So that's going to do it for this video. If you liked this video, if you liked this topic, feel free to hit that like button. If you disagree with me on this, go ahead and put it down in the comment section down below. If you loved the idea of this and are, think this is a possibility, go ahead and write in the comment section down below. If you're not subscribed to The Line Change and you liked this video and you've taken a gander at some of the other topics we've discussed, feel free to smash that subscribe button. You really help out the channel. If you are on Spotify, we are also on Spotify, and you can watch this same video on Spotify, and then we're also on Apple Podcasts as well. You can also find us on TikTok, the.line.change.po. You can find us on Instagram at The Line Change. You can find us on X at Line Change Van. And you can also find us on Patreon. I will leave the links to those in the description. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video.